Well, what a joy to be here with the guys today. As Renee said, I'm Carl from my dad Richard, and what a pleasure it is to be a part of the first here annual West Coast Homesteading Expo. We are really excited to talk to you guys about what we do with raising heritage grains. Our farm and business is called Palouse Heritage, based in Eastern Washington, but we have a lot we are excited to share with you today about the value of heritage grains, but also take that to make it more applicable and valuable to you guys, how you can mill these freshly for your own fresh flour at home for baked goods, and why that's good compared to maybe the stuff you get at the grocery store. So we're excited to dive in and looking forward for chat, and we're also going to include a little demo later on to just show you how easy it is to do this, to mill your own home grains, and yeah, hopefully you get a lot out of it. As you probably saw in the program, our friend Sean Finney was supposed to join us today. Sadly, he lives in Spokane. He got stuck coming across the pass, so Dad's going to fill in with some reserve duty for us. Thanks, Dad. We're going to, give it a... Go. That's right, go kids. All right, well, and Sean's a great guy. He's a friend of ours. He has a fascinating background. He's a grain scientist and grain quality control scientist with USDA and Washington State and in the various milling industry companies that he's been a part of, that he recognizes how important milling your own fresh grain and the value of heritage grains as well, which is why he's such a friend of ours. He has this really cool, big, hand-crank, Ukrainian-made, handcrafted stone mill that we're going to do for the demo. Would have been really cool to see, so you'll have to look that one up online. Unfortunately, we just got our little electric one here as a fill-in. So sorry about that, bear with us and we'll dive in. So go ahead and jump to the next slide, Renee, if that's wait, yeah, you got a clicker there. Let me just see if it works. It does. How about that? Great. Okay, well, again, about my background, I'll share just briefly. I had the background in the tech world and the military for the beginning part of my career, but then I made a shift here about a year ago to join the family farm business, and Dad will probably talk a little bit more about some of that background, but it was about 15 years ago we revived the family farm. If you go way back, I'm a fifth generation farmer, Dad fourth generation, my thanks. My great-great-grandfather went and homesteaded in the Palouse area of southeast Washington State, about an hour south of Spokane, in the Colfax area, a small town called Endicott, just outside of there is where our family farm is. And we had a family farm, generations, wheat farmers. We brought Turkey Red. Our ancestors actually brought that variety, which we'll talk briefly about, and some others, and grew it there, and was homesteaders there until when I was a child. So my grandfather ended up selling off most of the family farm because of socioeconomic conditions. We'll talk a little about this too, but just industrial agriculture makes it increasingly difficult for small-scale farmers to make it. You got to get big, expand. It's all about scale and efficiency, and that just wasn't ideal for our ways. And so my grandpa ended up selling off most of the original family farm, but about 15 years ago, my dad and his brother, my uncle, went back and reacquired the original portion of the original family farm, and that's where we still grow today. And then we have partner growers also in the Palouse area to help us have extra land so we can expand further what we're doing with heritage grains. We kind of started it as just a hobby thing. We think, hey, these heritage grains are really valuable, important, have a lot of benefits, and we need to keep them as a part of our food system. So it started as a hobby thing, but then we noticed people are actually really interested in using them themselves for their own home milling and home flour, and so it's grown from there. So we have partner growers, and that's really what's now emerged and become what is our Palouse Heritage Grain business. So that's how we've, in short, come to where we are today. So it's a joy to be with you and talk more about it. Dad, do you want to share any more about your background? There was a time when strangers were welcome here. We're going to be celebrating this nation's 250th birthday here pretty quick. And as Carl said, our people, they are blessed with a legacy because they came as strangers, and our nation has a great rainbow coalition of people that have joined together and have helped make this country what it is. That song was by Neil Sedaka, who I heard on the radio 1 week ago. He made that song popular in our bicentennial.
And I'm old enough to remember that and to have taken part. And now we have great young people like you that are here braving cold weather to join us. No, I'm not Sean Finney, but but I eat well. And we're delighted to share with you about the heritage that has come from people like him. Carl didn't introduce our beautiful granddaughter Annalise here, and this is all about next generation health. So it's looking back for heritage and appreciating what our people came from so many parts of the world. Special interest I have is with our Native American hosts. They were our first farmers, and we seek to honor them in our work. And so I joined Carl, and he's too modest to tell you this. This is Colonel Carl, who has taken upon himself the responsibilities and joys and opportunity to share the gospel with good grains. So we have some images for you here and a demo, and Carl, yeah, take it away, guy. I'd be happy to share.
Thanks. Yeah, not to make this too much about ourselves by any means, because there's a lot of interesting content here, but it's probably worth saying, well, why would you leave a career, a high-paying career in the tech world to go back into farming, where, let's be honest, the paycheck didn't follow me by any means when you have small-scale farming as your employment now. So, over the last several years, I've noticed several issues that really caught my attention that aligned with what Dad and Uncle started by reviving the farm. One thing, in the Air Force as an officer, our job, part of our job is to recruit and retain good people to come in and be a part of our armed services. That was becoming increasingly difficult. We'd go out and recruit, but so many people would come to show interest in joining our ranks, but they couldn't because they had medical issues. And it turns out, I looked into this, the Pentagon recently did a study. There's about 70% of military-age males in the United States are not eligible to serve because of health reasons. And a lot of those health reasons are diet and nutrition related. So, okay, something's going on with our food system there. Also, I had my own health condition. I started having digestive issues, so started learning more about how what the foods we eat really impact our gut, our biome in there, and then our whole body. So that opened my eyes to recognizing some problems in our industrial food system as well. And so some of those factors combined really motivated me to, hey, I need to jump in and be a part of this because I think it's the right thing to do. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the world of heritage grains. As a bit of a background, most of you are probably aware that grains have really played a huge role in building humanity, building civilization. When you think about grains, they were domesticated thousands of years ago in the Middle East and then spread throughout the world, and now they provide a large portion of our caloric intake today. 47% of human caloric intake across the world are comprised of grains. When we talk about wheat specifically, that's the most popular here in America. Americans eat more wheat than any other grain, and so it's very popular. And here in the Pacific Northwest, we grow a lot of grain, especially on the east side of the state, in the Palouse region. We grow upwards of 10+% of the nation's wheat supply just right here in our backyard, and that's a lot. But here's the strange thing. The vast majority of all that we grow here in our region, the Pacific Northwest, over 90% is shipped off overseas. And so, that's kind of strange. And so when we have bread filling, the aisles of our grocery stores here locally, it's like, okay, well, that's part of this big, giant global food system that's, it's mass produced and shipped long distances from the Midwest and Canada here to, that's kind of odd. You got these long supply chains in our global food system that, it's proved to be really efficient and make some people some money, but those supply chains and that whole system, it does have a lot of vulnerabilities and a lot of issues to it. And one of those being just with long global supply chains, those people who then are buying all that wheat, end up becoming maybe dependent upon it, and then you have pandemics and wars or trade wars, other things that can disrupt those supply chains, and then if you've killed their incentive to grow their own grain because they're getting it cheaply from mass production here, and now when they have problems, they can't produce it themselves. And so there's just layers upon layers of issues here with the modern food system. So that motivates us to get back in touch with okay, local resilient systems based on the heritage varieties that somewhat rejects the modernization and the dark underbelly that has come with that. And when we talk about modern foods. All right, let's talk terms and categories, just so we are all on the same page when we're using some of these terms, what we mean. So when you talk about grains are a big umbrella, and you can go back to the ancient grains. These are the pre-wheats, if you will, einkorn, emmer, spelt. You've probably heard of some of these things. Ancient grains are awesome, and so modern wheat has evolved from those original pre-wheat varieties. And so that's what we mean when we say ancient grains. And then landrace grains, those are more common traditional varieties of cereals, mainly wheats and barleys, those sorts of things, that had grown naturally from those ancient grains. So they developed naturally over millennia, adapted to the locales. And so that's where you have like landrace heritage wheats and barleys that were naturally derived and developed over time. And when we talk about heritage or heirloom grains, that's an umbrella term that includes the ancient varieties like einkorn, emmer, and spelt, plus what we call the landrace wheats and barleys. In our business, when we're talking Palouse Heritage, we mostly focus on the landrace heritage wheats and barleys. And then you've got modern wheat, or it's also classified with other modern grains. And there's a distinction here because in the early 20th century, that's where you had advancements in science and technology and breeding techniques, and that's when scientists were able to start crossing, hybridizing, breeding these grains. And some types of grains like corn, and then that's you start getting eventually you get genetic modification as well, GMOs. But that's where you had this industrial system that shifted the breeding techniques to maximize yields. And so with modern wheat, which is the vast majority of everything you see around here, and you go to the grocery store, the vast majority is all modern wheat. You're talking large kernels, because that's what they've been bred for by scientists. So you get higher yields, it's more efficient, more scale, more money, more profit, but that has come at an expense of less nutrition, less flavors. We'll talk about some of those, the downsides of modern grains. But from a terminology perspective, hopefully that's helpful to when we're talking about heritage grains. We're talking about both ancient varieties and the landrace wheats. Okay, the industrial shift in agriculture. So yeah, it was about 100 years ago. Some of this I briefly shared, but just to reiterate, you had your natural varieties that offered a lot of variety, flavor, different flavor profiles, great nutritional content, and biodiversity. The fields, you had lots of different types. Now with this shift in industrial agriculture, that's something called the Green Revolution, back over the course of the last century, now it's much more monocultures. So you have the same, but you've got this optimized new variety. It's been bred in the lab, and it's grown at mass scale. And so when you go drive through, wheat country nowadays here in Eastern Washington, the Palouse, or in the Midwest, it's just fields and fields and hills of just the same wheat growing over, and it's all standardized, highly efficient. But again, it's got a dark underbelly to it because those modern grains, in order to maximize the starch content and get the most out of that kernel, we're going to optimize it. They're not breeding it all for flavor. They're not worried about nutrition. Certainly not about biodiversity. You're probably aware of the issue. If you don't have enough biodiversity, you become more vulnerable to pests, man-made or natural. And so with all those concerns, and also the other key point with industrial agriculture and the modern grains is they're heavily dependent upon chemical inputs. They're designed so that there's going to be chemical weed control and that they will resist and sustain and can grow in, and also dependent upon synthetic nitrogen fertilizers to go in and grow them. They're certainly, they don't have the root systems that are naturally part of the heritage varieties that have deeper root systems and garner more nourishments from the ground naturally. So those are some of the key distinctions there. Again, all these reasons why we're really big on the heritage varieties. All right, a little bit more about why we think heritage landrace wheats are really the sweet spot, not just not just from a food system and local food system resiliency perspective, but even from a baking and consumption perspective. I noted before, the ancient grains, einkorn, emmer, spelt, those types, they're really cool. They've got great flavors, great nutrition. But let's be honest, they're hard to process and bake with, if we played around with some of that before. First of all, most of them are whole, so they have holes on, so that's extra processing and laborsome to try and even get it to a point where you can start milling it. And then when you mill it and trying to start baking with it, well, there's a lot of, we're not expert bakers by any means, but as casual bakers, when we try some of these things, or just talking to people with more baking experience, it's pretty clear that you gotta have some level of expertise and experience and knowledge to know how do you make stuff with einkorn and spelt and emmer, like that stuff. What combinations, hydration ratios, percentages, it gets complicated and it's hard. and one of the main things we want you to take away from our presentation today is that home milling fresh flour with heritage landrace wheats in particular, it's easy, it's great. It's that sweet spot because you get the flavor, nutrition, variety benefits from the ancient grains because they're natural and they have a lot of variety with heritage landrace wheats. But you're not dealing with the issues of modern grains that have, as I noted, been hybridized, maximized yield, so you get more starch, more content, less nutrition, different gluten structure. We'll talk briefly about that. So it's really that sweet spot between modern and ancient. So you get the benefits of the ancient, you get the flavor, the nutrition, the resilience, but you get the baking convenience of what we're used to with modern wheat. So that's really the key takeaway here. So you get the best of both worlds, I would say, with this sweet spot in the middle with heritage landrace wheats. The last point I'll put here, is the digestion piece. I do want to hit home because we get this question a lot like that. Dad and I sometimes joke, as heritage grain growers, we spend half of our time talking about what heritage means and what heritage grains are, and we'll spend the other half of our time explaining that no, they are not gluten-free. We get that question a lot. No, our grains, even the ancient grains, einkorn, emmer, spelt, those all do have some gluten in them, and wheat has gluten, so even the heritage grains do have wheat. There are other ancient varieties or other grain varieties that don't have gluten, like sorghum, I think, and buckwheat. There are some of those. We don't specialize in those, but with heritage wheats, there is some gluten still in them, as with any wheat or wheat varieties. But the key thing is that the gluten structure is very different in heritage landrace wheats compared to modern wheat. Very different. And when they went through that industrial breeding process, it changed the gluten structure. I'm not a grain scientist, I'm not an expert, but there's plenty of studies on this. I'm sure if you do your own research, you'll see the same results and the same conclusions, that gluten structure is different. It's a softer, more elastic type of gluten in the heritage varieties compared to what you have now. So that's why you hear anecdotally a lot of people say that, they can handle and digest heritage wheat flour much easier than what you get with modern grains. So if you have some digestive issues, maybe worth giving a shot. I would say though with celiac, you want to avoid, there is still gluten in it. It's just a different structure, easier to digest. So if you have celiac, you still want to avoid the heritage wheat. So disclaimer: this is not health advice. We're not medical experts here, but that's generally the case, and encourage you to certainly look into that yourselves. But easier digesting does tend to be what people report when they use our grains. All right, just a few more comparisons here. I would say to higher on the flavor profiles are very different. You go to the grocery store and it's like, okay, you go to the bread aisle, you go to the flour aisle, it's just flour, all-purpose flour, bread flour, but it's all like, most of it's is it bleached, unbleached, is it fortified? There's all these negative aspects, and it's bland and it's kind of all the same, right? It's like white flour, holy flour, bleached, unbleached. Well, actually, we envision there should be a difference in the bread and flour aisle in the grocery store than what there is today. Like, instead of just going to buy flour and it's just flour, it really should be more like when you go and buy apples. So when you buy apples, but there's Fuji, and there's Gala, and there's Cosmic Crisp, and Honey Crisp, and there's all these different varieties. Same thing if you go buy wine, right? Chardonnay, and Rosé, and Gewürztraminer, you name it. There's all these different varieties. Well, that's actually the way it's supposed to be with wheat, too. We've just lost that in a commoditized system. So that's why if you go check out our booth, you'll see we've got Turkey Red, and English Redhead, and White Snow. There's a lot of different varieties grains, and they're all good for different types of baking. So if you want pastries, you get a white Sonora, the soft white variety, and it's going to make an amazing pastry for you. Or for bread wheat, the Turkey Red is a hard red wheat that's going to make amazing bread for you. Like they have different flavor profiles and different benefits and aspects to them that are worth exploring and experimenting with, and bring back that diversity and that flavor and that fun with your baking, as opposed to just a bland flour where everything's the same. And the other key thing to all that on here is there are yield differences. Yield is what we mean when we're talking about how much it grows. So the modern varieties, they're heavily dependent upon those nitrogen fertilizer inputs. But with that and the way they're designed, they grow big kernels and lots of heads on the kernels, like they're big heads. So they get more yield, and that's how they can drive down the price. And so you've got cheaper. That allows, a more economically efficient system, so you can grow more of it, sell more of it at a lower price, and so it's cheap bread, and so I market it as cheaper bread and cheaper flour, and indeed it is cheaper. I would say at that immediate time of purchase, but I would say in the long run, we would argue it's far more costly because of the negative health aspects that it leads to. So in the long run, you're going to have health issues that are going to, not just you individually, but as a nation, as we can see, the fact, the majority of our men can't even serve in the military. This is a big reason why we don't have a very nutritious food system here. And part of that is with those yields. So yeah, a lot of people say, oh, well, your grains are more expensive. Yes, our grain and flour is more expensive than the cheap white stuff you're going to buy at the grocery store. But the reasons for that are, in the long run, is it really that much more expensive? Honestly, for what you even pay for just an average loaf of bread at the grocery store, $5 or whatever, you can pay the equivalent amount of your own raw grain, whether from us or someone else who provides raw grain, and you're going to be able to at least make enough to equate to that same amount of bread for about the same price. So at the end of the day, if you're willing to do it yourself and go healthy and fresh like that, and you evaluate the costs, it really does equal out. So those are just some considerations on the cost piece. And nutritional difference. It's probably hard to see. I know it's a small screen up here in your far away. So on our website, we have a lot of this information, or you can come to our booth at PS3. It's right there in the corner near one of the entrances. We've got a lot of information. If you want to go into the weeds and really drill down into some of the specifics on the different nutritional content, the differences between the landrace wheats and modern varieties, and even some of the ancient varieties, it is pretty interesting. But across the board, ancient heritage varieties are going to score higher on different micronutrients than any of the modern varieties. This is repeatedly shown in a variety of peer-reviewed studies. All right, we're going to shift now and talk a little bit about our experience growing these grains, because just like baking with them is a little bit different, we're also growing them, take some trial and error, and taking some lessons learned from us. This is a picture here, it's hard to see, of our farm there outside of Endicott in the eastern part of the state, and we've had a lot of fun growing grains there, so Dad, we just want to say a few words about our experience on the farm, and then shift into some of the history there as well.
This is actually the northernmost point of the Palouse River. So there's an arch here where this acreage is located, and this is where our ancestors immigrated in the 1880s from Eastern Europe. They were people of the land, as far back as we know, they've been people of the land, and they brought this incredible grain nicknamed Turkey Red. I'm sorry to report that a lot of this is because Americans don't know their geography very well. It's actually not from Turkey, it's from Ukraine. Ukraine is the great breadbasket of the world. When I tell people that before the 1870s and 1880s there was no bread in the world, in America, it's obviously not true. People could make bread out of soft white wheat, and some of you might have tried this from time to time. You can make bread out of soft red grain. And those grains were raised in America way back early on from colonial times forward, and we've done a fair amount of work tracking down what those varieties were. But when you make grain out of a soft wheat, it's very dense. And so it's today what people use for biscuits and pancakes and scones and things like that. When from the 1870s, these grains were brought to America from Eastern Europe, they were extremely hard. In fact, they're called today hard red, hard white. And they are created in ways that not only do they taste very good, they're hard on milling equipment because they are hard. And the immigrants would tell the millers, if you mill it, fortunately at that time in the 1870s and 1880s, there were improved milling techniques called the hammer mill that reduced this to a flour that then they baked with. And guess what? The lights went on. Yes, this does truly make great bread. And so hard breads today are the premier grain for bread making. As Carl said, a lot of it's been hybridized, which comes at a cost. And so we have sought to resurrect the original varieties, and that's what grew here back in the day. I was talking with an elder in our community about a year and a half ago. He's actually going to be 100 years old next week. Now that I think about it, I guess that's a good claim for health and nutrition. I was asking him about the original turkey reds because like Carl said, a lot of farmers, because it's tough in farm country today with the price of commodity grains, to make ends meet. And so many times it's more an issue of production rather than flavor and quality that way. And I asked him about that transition time that took place, 1950s, 1960s. He got kind of a twinkle in his eye, and he said, yeah, like a lot of other people, we had to start raising those grains. But we always kept the turkey red for ourselves. They kept it, they milled it themselves, and they've used it throughout time. So anyway, that's the area. I do, Carl, can we click back to that big chart? This defies every rule with PowerPoint. I know it's small, it's a long way to go. So I won't ask you to think about what all these numbers represent. Take a look at the color. The red color is the highest level of nutrient for that particular grain category. And hey, farmers have to do what they have to do to make ends meet. And we have a lot of friends who are commodity farmers, and they grow for production. But I will say that if you look at the line here of modern cultivars, modern variety wheats, there isn't a single red mark in there. The highest levels of these nutrients that are there so that we all have strong bones, strong skin, good digestion, organs, all the rest. Look, calcium, phosphorus, sulfur, potassium, boron, all the rest. It's the ancient grains and the landrace varieties that have the highest levels of nutritive value. Go ahead, Carl. So, yeah, here we go. Well, that was the old day, and that was at Palouse Colony Farm. In those days, you needed a couple dozen people to bring the crop in. Typically, you'd have 36 head of horses. That was a lot of manual labor, so no wonder they needed good nutrition. But this was life back in the day. Today, modern mechanization has meant less manpower. At the same time, we've tried to resurrect heritage grains because of the health benefits. I'm really pleased that of all places we're here in this part of the state today for this event. Because part of putting this, I wrote a book for WSU Press a few years ago called Harvest Heritage that tells about the origins of agriculture in the Pacific Northwest. And we happen to be living in the backyard where this all started. Yes, we're from Eastern Washington, and maybe that's more associated with grain culture, but this is the area, because of the Hudson's Bay Company interest in the Pacific Northwest in the 1820s, where farming actually started. Here is the original map from Fort Nisqually. A lot of you are from the Puget Sound area. You know where Fort Nisqually is. It's actually partially relocated over here in the north part of town. The original Fort Nisqually, Fort Farm, was down here by DuPont. And these brown spots are where the first grain culture was ever planted, literally and figuratively, in the Pacific Northwest. We're right now up here about this area. And so if you go and look at all these spots, that's where it actually happened. Fortunately, one farmer in the Willamette Valley was still raising the original grains in the early 1900s, and a USDA plant explorer kept a sample, and that sample we were able to document, and we've been growing these out. And so that was a soft white, which again, as I told you, is more of a pancake, scone, pastry kind of flour. But interesting to me that farming started here. The oldest, gee, I should have some kind of a prize here. Yeah, come over to the booth if you get this, and we'll give you some flour. What's the oldest building in the state of Washington? Okay, who said it? Greenway. I heard it out here. Thank you. Come on by. The oldest building in the state of Washington is the granary at Fort Nisqually, and it's still there. By the way, this is the farm at the foot of what is today McCord Air Force Base, and you can look in the distance, and that's for what the town of Spanaway is named. That's the wheat field right there. And we've been able to resurrect those grains, and that's part of the repertoire that we've been growing. So here it is. That is the grain. That's the original grain, white llamas. It was brought here in the 1820s by the Hudson's Bay Governor, Sir George Simpson. And here he is. That's his trip in the 1820s. Somewhere in Canoe, he's got a keg of grain. And that grain gave birth to agriculture in the Pacific Northwest. So it's really fun to see the heritage in the broader sense of the term and the health benefits in the real scientific sense of the term because of the bran layer, because of the nutritional value that you saw in that previous chart. We also raise white Sonora. The white llamas may have been the oldest grain ever in the Pacific Northwest, but grains came with Christopher Columbus in the late 15th century. So if you go down to Arizona, New Mexico, Southern California, you'll find white Sonora. Fortunately, living here in the Pacific Northwest, we grow everything. And so we did visit with friends in California, and we were able to obtain some of the original white Sonora seed. And so we have been using that. It's a soft white, so it's great. Again, pancake mix, biscuits, all the rest. English redhead. This is from southern England. This is a very popular grain used for pastries. They're actually also using this for pizza dough. And it's got a rich, buttery flavor. It has a nickname, Red Russian, once again, because people were attaching odd names to things back in the day. It's actually an English landrace, and it's got a terrific flavor profile for flatbreads. Yeah, it's a pasta wheat. In fact, Mark Vetri, if some of you know of Michelin five-star restaurants, he's one of the great bakers in the United States. What's the great award? The James Beard Award. Okay, so if you go to Philadelphia, he's using our English redhead for pastas. Go ahead. Turkey Red, the godfather of modern bread wheat. If you want the best tasting bread anywhere in the country, I encourage you to pick up Palouse Heritage Turkey Red. This is where it came from Ukraine, which was the breadbasket of Europe, and has transformed bread making all throughout Europe and North America. So hope you have a chance to sample Turkey Red, and that's one of our premier grains that we've been raising. Very high in protein, and as you can see, very, very healthy. By the way, we're going to have Amber Eden, probably the only hard white landrace in existence in North America. It's in the ground right now. So if you come back next year, hopefully we'll have it. The one thing about a whole grain hard red wheat, when you know, they take the bran out of it because, okay, here's the real truth of the matter. Americans are spoiled by their food. We like our red white and we like our beer clear. Have you been to Europe? Guess what? The beer is cloudy and the bread is brownish. Whole grain is good. those nutritional values, those vitamins, they're in the bran and they're in the germ. And so that's a good thing. Amber Eden is a hard white landrace, so you can have a light-colored loaf of bread, and it's still whole grain. And it's not by some deception. It's named Eden wheat. When it was first collected by the USDA explorer, and this was in Basra, Iraq, 150 years ago, he asked this fellow why the stuff tasted so good. He looked up at him and he smiled and he says, everybody knows, it's from the Garden of Eden. Next year, you'll have a chance to taste some, and you can decide for yourself. We gave it to the USDA lab to run a protein study. He called me back, he said, I need another sample, there's something wrong here. I've never had protein at this level. So, okay, I drove all the way back, took him a second sample. A pretty high protein wheat is 13%. 14 maybe if they're really red. There's 15 turkey red. 16+% protein in Amber Eden. And so we're excited about that. And guess what? We get excited about grain and health, and I hope we do too. So, Carl, that's a little word about some of those varieties.
Perfect. Thanks, Dad. Yeah, I know the chart here is hard to read, but I think I'm going to do these are available, and they break down all the different varieties that we have, and it includes a column of best uses as well. We'll talk to you briefly about recipes and whatnot, but I do, in case I forget to mention elsewhere, I do want to emphasize, Dad mentioned whole grain, so if you mill your own grain at home, it's going to be whole grain. You can buy sifters to get it sifted yourself if you want to get some sifted flour, but we definitely encourage whole grain milling and whole grain usage, because then you're getting the full complement of all the nutrients and aspects of the grain. And that whole grain baking does come with a little bit of a learning curve if you're not used to that. So our website also has a lot of helpful resources to help you with getting up to speed and working through that process of getting familiar with whole grain baking. But yeah, the benefits of using these different varieties, particularly the white varieties like Amber Eden or White Sonora, is that, okay, we can still get that white texture and that white look and feel and that amazing flavor with all the nutrition. Dad mentioned our Amber Eden. It is, so we're growing more of it out. We've got some of it in the ground that's growing, but we do have some that actually grew last year, and we haven't been able to get it cleaned yet. That's why it's not available for retail sale. But within a month or two, we will actually be able to start selling that retail because the cleaning will be done. So we're excited about that. The first one he mentioned, the first wheat of the Pacific Northwest, my personal favorite, the White Llamas Columbia Gold. That's a soft white. We do not have that available yet, unfortunately. That is also in the ground, still in increased trials. So after this harvest, though, we will be able to retail that as well. But got a lot of other options in stock. Okay, well, let's talk. With our last bit of time here, we're going to get into the milling piece. Okay, fresh milled flour. Why encourage fresh milling of your flour? The short and quick of it is that fresh milled flour gives you the freshest and best flavor, and also the best nutritional value, because commercial flour, which you go buy at the store, the flour will degrade quickly after it's milled, because you're releasing the oils within the kernel. The kernel is stable in and of itself, but once you mill it, crack it open, those oils are exposed to oxygen and it begins to oxidize and break down. That's why flour will go rancid. The grain kernels are whole kernels. You buy the whole berries. They're good forever. They're good for eons, generations. They're stable. Just store them in a sealed container. You're good. But once you mill, then that flour is going to start breaking down. You're going to start losing flavor and nutrition. If you keep your fresh milled flour in the refrigerator for a week to 2 weeks, you're still pretty good. But after about 2 weeks, it's not so good anymore. So obviously that's the commercial flour, you're not getting those benefits. All right, so whole grain, fresh milled, store it. To store your flour, you can just use sealed Tupperware containers, works just fine. But after you mill it and get it sealed, you want to put it in the fridge, keep it fresh for the week or two. You're still okay. There are three main parts to the kernel. To a grain kernel, you got the bran, the endosperm, and endosperm and the germ. And so that's what you benefit when you've got whole grain. All that's being included together. You get the benefits of all those parts of the kernel. When you're sifting, you're basically just you're basically just getting the endosperm from the starchy part, which is where the least amount of nutrients are. So, and also less flavor. So that's just another angle to why home milling your own fresh milled home flour is so great. Home milling is growing in popularity. We already had a lot of people stop by and do this, ask me a lot of questions. People appreciate it because the nutrition and flavor pieces we keep harping on. Also, it does support food sovereignty, food independence, and the better aspects of people having their own food self-sufficiency. You also have transparency in your ingredients. You know what you're milling, so you know what you're eating, and it keeps you connected to your farmers. So, how do you get started if you haven't started? Maybe some of you have started, you're still not sure, you need a little more guidance. Either way, on our website, we've got a great tutorial. There's one of our recent blog posts that walks through how to get started with home milling. It breaks down each of the categories of home mills. So there are the electric stone mills. That's kind of the most common, I would say, that people are going with for home milling these days. And those are about the best. That's common. So stone milling with stone mills, it keeps cooler temperatures, so you get the highest quality, I would say, of grain. You've got a lot of control over speed, so you can control how coarse it is or not. So there's a lot of benefits to the home stone mills. You can get them electrified, or you can get hand cranked versions, so you get a manual or electric. But the key thing is they're very expensive, relatively speaking. And also they're hard to get. I find there's so much demand these days that like a mock mill or some of the common brands of home stone mills are they're all sold out in a lot of places. They're hard to find. So you want an alternative? We got some alternatives for you. The electric impact mill. That's what we got here. We'll do a quick demo here when I'm done with this, and you'll see that. And it's good for me too because I'm lazy, and it's easy. You just plug it in and it goes. So it goes, it mills fast. It's really fast. It's really easy. It does go at a little higher temperature. So if you're a real aficionado, maybe the higher temperature will change the flavor a little bit. But I don't. It's good enough for me, and maybe it's good enough for you too. And then there are manual steel mills. They use steel burrs typically, and they're manual, so they're good for if you want to go on a grid, that sort of thing. They can be pretty expensive as well. So the electric impact mills are much more less expensive. I think on average is about $300. But actually the cheapest, about $250, you can get the KitchenAid attachment. And that's really good. It works really well with the KitchenAid attachments. They just are small, so it's the slowest probably of all the options. It's just going to take you a while. But if you're just making for yourself, it's probably more than enough, or even 1 or 2 people. So all those things to consider. If you go to our website, go to that page for home milling options and guidance. You're going to break down a summary of all this, and also there's a lot of promo codes for discounts on these things, because again, they can get pretty expensive. All right, let's do the demo here. Brad, you want to help me bring the table up? Basically, all we're going to do here is we're going to mill up. We got a bag of English redhead soft red meat. We're going to mill it up in this Nutrimill home electric mill. And we're only going to do about a pound. A pound of whole berries will equate to about 5 cups of flour. And you'll see how quick and easy it is. We'll just fire it up, turn it on. It is kind of loud, so kids get a little annoyed sometimes when mom's doing it in the house. But so be aware of that. But it's pretty simple and easy. So we'll give it a shot here, and then you can see for yourself. On our website there, you can learn more about everything. Our grains are available on our website. We also have a subscription program where you can just get 3 different varieties delivered to you every quarter. So that's a great option too. Follow us on social media, and we've got a newsletter, a lot of resources available. Really grateful for the community and all the interest that we've had, and people wanting to get involved and learn more about heritage grains and how great they are. Really appreciate the audience and your participation and excitement here today, and coming out and braving the colder temperatures to join us. This has been wonderful. And do we have time still for a question or two, Renee? Yes, we do. Okay. Do we have 1 or 2 questions?
I was just wondering, you talk about like homesteading and stuff like that. If someone wanted to go off grid, how easy is it to do it on a small scale, grow just enough for one's property?
I'm glad you asked, because our most recent blog post on our website gives you a whole guide on how to grow your own heritage grains and tries to break it down, make it pretty easy. It's definitely doable, absolutely. Dad has a lot of experience with students and kids even doing it for themselves. A lot of the details escape me at the moment. I'm trying to think like what the seeding rate is versus, yeah, you probably know.
Yeah, so an acre is about the size of a football field. And we typically seed about 85 pounds an acre, so you need a seed drill box, to see that much. You can hand broadcast, but, then that's a lot of raking to do to get some soil on top. The yields are somewhat variable. We're pleased that, these yield well, and we don't use intensive chemical farming at all. But for an acre, you could conceivably get 3/4 of a ton or more of grain. So the challenge is, processing once it's there. That if you don't have a mechanical combine, that's hand sigh or, small cutter work. I'd encourage you to visit with WSU Extension Services, who have solutions to some of those problems, because the scalable thing, that's a great question, because the more we can do to advocate for self-reliance and resilience, the better. But that's kind of some basics.
Another question we get a lot, maybe an elephant in the room, is are you organic? And because you can have heritage grains, but they may not be raised organically still, because organic is how you grow them, of course. And so we have a very small farm, what you saw in the photos there, and we've gotten to the point with demand, we need more space. So we have partner growers that now grow most of our grains, and they're all fully certified organic. Our farm is in the process of transitioning to organic. In the past, we've used light herbicides. We've never used anything harsh like glyphosate. We avoid that. We use cover crops for fertilizer, and then, of course, all our partner growers do the same. And also, so we're in the process of going through that and getting the organic certification handling. That takes time. It's also very expensive. So in the process, so you'll see we don't have the organic labels, but the vast majority of what we grow is actually grown fully organic, and we'll have that certification here hopefully in the not too distant future. So, okay, well, we have time, Renee?
One more question?
Or one more?
Time for one more question.
Okay.
I can speak loud. 1,500 pounds seems like a lot for a family. Is there something I'm missing there, or what are you really telling me there?
I'm just saying that's how much you can grow on an acre.
On an acre?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's a big area, that's a football field. Yeah, so going into the labor issue is important, because you would want to try to keep that as weed-free as you can, which is, again, why you'd need small-scale equipment to make that work. Yep. You're right, that's a lot of pancakes. But our family goes through it. We love it, and we're really grateful for you guys coming out on a fun day to see so many great things and learn, and hats off to you for being with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Just to conclude, give it a shot, try for yourself, start small, start easy, it's worth it. Come check out our booth. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We'd be certainly grateful for that. We have a newsletter as well. Thank you guys so much for your support and your attention today. You've been a great crowd. Also, if you want to come up, I'll leave the little flower bag. Just take a look at the soft red flower that we milled up real quick. And yeah, absolutely. Okay, yeah. Thank you guys so much.